The digestive system. So here are the different parts of your digestive system.
It basically consists of the rectum, the large intestine, the small intestine, the pancreas, the stomach, also called gaster and ventriculus, and the liver with the gallbladder. The esophagus is also part of this system, as well as various salivary glands near the mouth.
And here are its functions. We have ingestion of food, secretion of fluids and digestive enzymes, mixing and movement of food and waste through the body, digestion of food into smaller pieces, absorption of nutrients, and excretion of wastes.
Human beings take food through mouth and digest it in specific organs for digestion. The undigested food is defecated. The food we take passes through a specific canal which begins with buccal cavity and ends at the anus. This canal is called alimentary canal or the digestive tract.
Your digestive system is made up of the GI tract and your liver, pancreas, and gallbladder. The GI tract is a series of hollow organs that are connected to each other from your mouth to your anus. The organs that make up your GI tract in order that they are connected include your mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and anus. The process of nutrition begins with intake of food, called ingestion. Digestion is important because your body needs nutrients, and nutrients include what we eat, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, and water. Your digestive system breaks down and absorbs nutrients from the food and liquids you consume to use for important things like energy, growth, and repairing cells. Okay, so these are the layers of your GI tract. So the innermost layer is your mucosa. Underneath is the submucosa, followed by the muscularis propria, and finally the outermost layer is the adventitia. Okay, so refer to these layers. The structure of these layers varies in different regions of the digestive system depending on their function. Here, so this is your stomach. In your stomach, we have, as shown here in the image, you have there the innermost layer, which is your mucosa, submucosa, then your muscle layers, and your serosa.
Have you ever wondered how these loops of intestine don't get tangled or bounce out of control when you run, jump, or dance? Fortunately, many of your abdominal organs are held in place by a serous membrane called the peritoneum. Serous membranes line several body cavities where they secrete lubricating serous fluid to reduce friction from movement of muscles. The peritoneum is a double layer of simple squamous serous tissue called the mesothelium. And there are two layers of peritoneum, as we mentioned before, and these two layers are known as the parietal peritoneum and the visceral peritoneum. And these two layers of peritoneum are continuous with one another and have a potential space between them filled with serous fluid. And this space allows the layers to effortlessly slide over each other, as you can see in our image. Together, both layers anchor organs and provide support for their movements. The parietal peritoneum. This is a serous tissue layer adjacent to the abdominal cavity. And in this image, we can see it along the boundaries of the abdomen. The parietal peritoneum is sensitive to pressure, and pain felt here is well localized, unlike pain in the second layer of peritoneum, which is of course the visceral peritoneum. This is also a serous tissue layer that is in direct contact with the abdominal organs. We can see it here around the liver, and we can also see a part of the gastrointestinal tract. The movement of food through the stomach and the intestines causes those organs to stretch, and the visceral peritoneum is sensitive to this stretching. However, painful stretching of visceral peritoneum is not very well localized. So pain signals here that are felt elsewhere in the body are called referred pain. So now that we've gone over the structure of the peritoneum itself, let's go over how it is organized in the abdomen. And peritoneum may or may not completely surround an organ, so let's take a look at what they might look like. Organs that are completely surrounded by peritoneum are called intraperitoneal organs. And most intraperitoneal structures are associated with the gastrointestinal tract, as this organisation allows for both support and movement. For example, the transverse colon could look something like this. The lumen that food passes through would be here, and this is the wall of the colon over here. And over here we can see the peritoneum passing completely around the colon.
Okay, let's go to the mouth. The mouth is the beginning of the digestive tract. So I think you already know how your mouth works. It is where you chew your food. So after you start eating, you chew your food into pieces that are more easily digested, wherein your saliva mixes to whatever you put inside your mouth, and then it becomes easier to swallow. And also, on the other hand, your saliva has digestive enzymes na. So, kahit nasa bibig mo pa lang, your digestion already starts. Teeth. So, we have 20 called temporary or milk teeth when we were babies. And they are replaced by 32 permanent teeth, 16 in each jaw. Each tooth has a root lifted in the gum. And permanent teeth are 4 types. So, we have here the incisors, canines, premolars, and molars. This is supposedly how your teeth is arranged from front to back. That's for your upper jaw, and this is for your lower jaw. Salivary glands. 3 pairs of salivary glands are present in the mouth. We have parotid, sublingual, submaxillary, or submandibular glands. So here, that's how they look like and where they are located. Okay, and here are the types of teeth and their functions. For your incisors, those are for cutting and biting. Canines, tearing and pursing. Premolars, crushing and grinding. And our molars, imubag-ang, crushing, grinding, and mastication. The salivary glands secrete a viscous fluid called saliva, approximately 1.5 liters per day. It digests starch by the action of the enzyme tyalin or amylase in the saliva, which converts starch into maltose. Saliva also contain an antibacterial enzyme called lysozyme. Tongue. The tongue is a muscular sensory organ which helps in mixing the food with the saliva. The taste buds in the tongue helps us recognize the taste of food. The masticated food, what does masticated food means? An imo na ginsupa, the chewed food in the buccal cavity becomes a bolus which is rolled by the tongue and passed through the pharynx into the esophagus by swallowing. During swallowing, the epiglottis closes and prevents the food from entering into the trachea. So your epiglottis opens and closes. If it is food, it directs it to your digestive system. And if it is air, of course, it goes to the respiratory system. Pharynx. The pharynx is a membrane-lined cavity behind the nose and mouth. So this is also found in your respiratory system. It serves as a pathway for the movement of food from mouth to esophagus. You may wonder why sometimes pag nakaon ka tapos naghatching ka, ang luto hingad to damahanim irong, because of the pharynx. Your pharynx connects your nose to your mouth, right? Esophagus, or the food pipe, is a muscular membranous canal about 22 centimeters in length. It conducts food from pharynx to the stomach by peristalsis, or the wave-like movement produced by rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the muscular walls of the alimentary canal. Mastication. So, as simple as that, it's just chewing. The medical term for chewing. Swallowing. We call it deglutition.
First, the food is broken up in the mouth by the teeth and then mixed with saliva with the help of the salivary glands. Saliva contains a digestive enzyme called amylase that already begins to digest carbohydrates in the mouth. It splits carbohydrates into smaller units. The ball-like mixture of food with saliva, also known as bolus, is pushed into the throat by the tongue, and finally into the esophagus, which propels the bolus to the stomach. The esophageal lumen, that is, the opening inside the esophagus, is very flexible, which allows boluses of different sizes to be transported. The esophagus consists of several layers. These layers occur throughout the entire digestive tract. The two outer muscle layers are responsible for peristalsis. Through these two muscles, the bolus can be transported from the mouth to the stomach, even if the person is standing on his head.
Okay, so the stomach is a wide J-shaped muscular organ located between esophagus and the small intestine. The gastric glands present in the inner walls of the stomach secrete gastric juice.
The stomach is often divided into 6 areas. The stomach is composed of a similar structure to the esophagus. It has a longitudinal muscle layer on the outside. Underneath, we can find circular muscle fibers. In addition to this, there is an oblique muscle layer overlaying the mucosa. On the inside, there are rugae that allow the stomach to enlarge when food is consumed. The stomach wall contains gastric glands. They produce mucus, which is able to protect the stomach wall from the secreted gastric acid. Gastric acid is produced by simply smelling or seeing food, but also spices, and the stretching of the stomach causes the secretion, that is, the release of gastric acid. About 1 to 2 liters of gastric juice are produced per day. Since the esophagus does not have a protective mucus layer like the stomach and esophagus are separated by a sphincter. It relaxes when a bolus is pushed from the esophagus into the stomach and then contracts to prevent acid and food from going back up. Gastric juice consists, among other things, of hydrochloric acid, the enzyme pepsin, the intrinsic factor, and lipase for the digestion of fat. In addition to nutrients, food also contains bacteria that can damage the body. The components of hydrochloric acid are able to destroy harmful bacteria. In addition, hydrochloric acid converts pepsinogen, also released by the gastric glands, into pepsin. Pepsin is able to break down proteins in the stomach. For a vitamin B12 absorption in the small intestine, the intrinsic factor is needed, which is produced by the gastric glands. The vitamin must combine with intrinsic factor, then it can be absorbed later by the small intestine. Vitamin B12 helps keep the body's nerve and blood cells healthy and helps make DNA. It also contains gastric lipase, an acid-resistant enzyme for fat digestion. In the stomach, gastric lipase splits a triglyceride into a free fatty acid and a diglyceride, whereby only the free fatty acid can be absorbed by the body. More effective fat digestion takes place in the small intestine. through gastric juice and stomach movements, which take place approximately every 20 seconds, the individual boluses are mixed to a semi-fluid mass of partly digested food, the so-called chyme. The chyme cannot enter the duodenum at first because there is a sphincter at the stomach exit. The pyloric sphincter resembles the esophageal sphincter. The pyloric sphincter opens only a few millimeters, so that larger pieces remain inside the stomach.
Regulation of stomach secretion is divided into 3 phases: cephalic, gastric, and intestinal. In the cephalic phase, the taste or smell of food, tactile sensation of food in the mouth, or thought of food sends nervous impulses to the medulla oblongata. These impulses cause parasympathetic neurons via the vagus nerves to stimulate secretion of hydrochloric acid and pepsin in the stomach. The parasympathetic stimulation also results in secretion of gastrin from the lower part of the stomach. This hormone travels through the bloodstream and further stimulates hydrochloric acid and pepsin secretion in the upper and middle parts of the stomach. In the gastric phase of gastric secretion, food has entered and distended the stomach. This distension activates a parasympathetic reflex via the medulla oblongata and also has a direct stimulatory effect on the gastric glands. The result is continued secretion of hydrochloric acid and pepsin. In the intestinal phase of gastric secretion, chyme has entered the duodenum, so gastric secretion is no longer needed. When the chyme contains lipids from the digestion of fats or contains enough hydrochloric acid to bring its pH below 2, gastric secretion is inhibited. The lipids and hydrogen ions inhibit gastric secretion by 3 simultaneous actions. First, they cause impulses to go to the medulla oblongata to decrease parasympathetic stimulation of the gastric glands. Secondly, they set up local reflexes via neurons in the wall of the gut that decrease gastric secretion. Thirdly, they cause the release of 3 local hormones which travel via the circulation to the gastric glands and inhibit their secretion.
The small intestine is approximately 20 to 25 feet in length and is about as big around as your middle finger. It is divided into 3 parts. We have the duodenum, jejunum, and your ileum. The beginning portion of the small intestine begins at the exit of the stomach, or your pylorus, and curves around the pancreas to end of the region of the left upper part of the abdominal cavity where it joins the jejunum. The duodenum has an important anatomical feature, which is the ampulla of Vater. This is the site at which the bile duct and pancreatic duct empty their contents into the small intestine, which helps with digestion. The jejunum is the part of the small intestine, and the ileum, the lower part, though there is no clear delineation between the jejunum and ileum. The duodenum is the first section of the small intestine and is the shortest part of the small intestine. It is where most chemical digestion using enzymes takes place. The jejunum is the middle section of the small intestine. It has a lining which is designed to absorb carbohydrates and proteins. The inner surface of the jejunum, its mucous membrane, is covered in projections called villi, which increase the surface area of tissue available to absorb nutrients from the gut contents. The epithelial cells which line these villi possess even larger numbers of microvilli. The transport of nutrients across epithelial cells through the jejunum includes the passive transport of some carbohydrates and the active transport of amino acids, small peptides, vitamins, and most glucose. The villi in the jejunum are much longer than in the duodenum or ileum. Finally, the ileum. The ileum is the final section of the small intestine. The function of the ileum is mainly to absorb vitamin B12, bile salts, and any products of digestion that were not absorbed by the jejunum. The wall itself is made up of folds, each of which has many tiny finger-like projections known as villi. The ileum has an extremely large surface area for the absorption of enzyme molecules and for the absorption of products of digestion. The villi contain large numbers of capillaries that take the amino acids and glucose produced by digestion to the hepatic portal vein and the liver. Lacteals are the small lymph vessels that are present in villi. They absorb fatty acids and glycerol, the products of fat digestion, into direct circulation. Layers of circular and longitudinal smooth muscle enable the digested food to be pushed along the ileum by waves of muscle contractions called peristalsis. The undigested food are sent to the colon or your large intestine. An important anatomic feature of the small intestine is also its highly integrated nervous system, which lies within the wall of the intestine called your enteric nervous system. It plays a very important role in coordinating much of the activities of the small intestine, including its muscular activity of propulsion, or the moving of intestinal contents. The mucosa of the small intestine is a simple columnar epithelium with four major cell types: the absorptive cells, goblet cells, granular cells, and endocrine cells. Exocrine cells in the mucosa of the small intestine secrete the following enzymes, and endocrine cells secrete cholecystokinin and secretin. The most important factor for regulating secretions in the small intestine is the presence of your chyme. Peristalsis. Peristalsis is a series of wave-like, so this is how your stomach contents move. So it is a wave-like muscle contraction that move food through the digestive tract. It starts in the esophagus, where strong wave-like motions of the smooth muscle move balls of swallowed food to the stomach. The motion mixes and shifts the chyme back and forth. Segmentation contractions are a common type of mixing motility seen especially in the small intestine. Segmental rings of contraction chop and mix the ingesta, or your ingested contents. Alternating contraction and relaxation of the longitudinal muscle in the wall of the gut also provides effective mixing of its content. There, so this is your food, this is your peristalsis, which was mentioned earlier, wave-like. So, nagko-contract hiya, nahimumove na mahingade and here. Okay, so pwedeng pabalik-balik, nahingangadi, 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 hanggang nahumok hiya. Okay? These are your small and large intestine. Your large, this is your large and your small. And after that, mangangapupo ka na. Di na dede, malugsong na nga de mo waste product.
The small intestine consists of three sections: duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. The ileum continues into the large intestine in the right lower abdomen. The duodenum and the jejunum have circular folds to increase the contact surface with the food. These circular folds extend about 1 centimeter into the lumen of the small intestine. These folds are covered with small finger-like projections called villi. Villi increase the surface considerably. Villi are about 1 millimeter long. Each villus contains blood capillaries and a lymphatic capillary called lacteal, which we will see later. The nutrients, marked green here, are absorbed by the villus and transferred to the blood capillaries. Some nutrients, such as glucose, do not require a carrier. They are transported freely in the bloodstream. Other nutrients, such as iron, require transport proteins like transferrin. Fats are transported by chylomicrons, which are lipoproteins. The triglycerides to be transported are virtually enclosed in the lipoprotein. Chylomicrons and triglycerides are then transported through the lacteal of the villus. Each villus is covered by even smaller microvilli. They multiply the intestinal surface considerably. The microvilli absorb nutrients and transport them to the inside. The last part of the small intestine is the ileum. It does not have, unlike the duodenum and jejunum, circular folds. The ileum absorbs electrolytes, such as calcium, for building bones, hair, and teeth. Trace elements, such as zinc, for sperm production and the immune system. Vitamins, such as B12, for the formation and maturation of red blood cells. And remaining bile acid, which is transported back to the liver via the bloodstream. As with the esophagus, the food is transported by peristalsis. In contrast, segmentation contractions serve to mix the chyme, which is shown here in yellow and red to make it easier to see the mixing process.
Liver. The liver is the largest solid organ in the body. It removes toxins from the body's blood supply, maintains healthy blood sugar levels, regulates blood clotting, and performs hundreds of other vital functions. It is located beneath the rib cage in the right upper abdomen. Here are a few key facts about our liver. The liver filters all of the blood in the body. It breaks down poisonous substances such as alcohol and drugs. That's why if you take more than you can handle, you take chemicals or you take medicines, you take drinks and food more than you can handle, your liver will actually suffer. The liver also produces bile, a fluid that helps digest fats and carry away waste. The liver consists of 4 lobes, which are each made up of 8 sections and thousands of lobules. So here are some of the other important functions of your liver. We also have albumin production. Albumin is a protein that keeps fluids in the bloodstream from leaking into surrounding tissue. It also carries hormones, vitamins, and enzymes through the body. Then bile production. Bile is a fluid that is critical to the digestion and absorption of fats in the small intestines, which was mentioned also here. Filters blood, regulates amino acids, regulates blood clotting. Blood clotting coagulants are created using vitamin K, which can only be absorbed with the help of bile, a fluid the liver produces. It helps us resist infection, it stores vitamins and minerals, and it processes glucose. The liver removes excess glucose from the bloodstream and stores it as glycogen. As needed, it can convert glycogen back into glucose. Okay, so here are some of the most important individual parts of your liver. We have your common hepatic duct, your falciform ligament, Glison's capsule, your hepatic artery, hepatic portal vein, your lobes, lobules, and your peritoneum. So this table, I think, is found in your book, so you may read through it and understand the different functions of your liver.
The liver. One can understand how the liver functions and aids the digestion of food in humans, apart from it producing vital nutrients and helping in the excretion of waste material from the body. The liver is the largest organ in the human body. The liver alone weighs about 1.5 to 3 kilograms in the body. The liver occupies much of the upper right quadrant of the abdomen, to the right of the stomach and immediately below the diaphragm. The liver is divided into two unequal lobes, a large right lobe and a smaller left lobe. The liver plays a number of vital roles, such as metabolizing the breakdown, products of digestion, and detoxifying substances that are harmful to the body. The liver also provides essential energy-producing substances and supplies vital vitamins including iron, vitamin B12, and copper. The liver controls the production and excretion of cholesterol and metabolizes alcohol into mild toxin. It also performs many important functions, including storing iron, maintaining the hormonal balance, producing immune factors to fight infections, regulating blood clotting, and producing bile. The hepatic portal veins, which are blood vessels that carry blood from the gastrointestinal tract and spleen to the liver, pick up nutrients and toxins from the stomach and intestines for processing. The hepatic ducts and gallbladder send the processed bile to the duodenum, which is about 25 centimeters long and a C shape. The stomach opens up into the duodenum through a pyloric sphincter, a muscle that acts as a valve that controls passage of food from the stomach into the small intestine. The abdominal aorta and hepatic veins supply and return blood to the liver. One of the most important functions of the liver is to produce bile. This digestive juice dissolves fat into watery contents, much like detergents that dissolve grease from a frying pan. This juice is stored in the gallbladder between meals. During meals, it is squeezed out of the gallbladder through the bile ducts and into the intestines to mix with the fat in the blood through the bile ducts. When food, medicines, liquids, etc. are consumed and digested, the cells within the liver that contain a number of powerful enzymes break them down into many toxins. Ammonia, a toxin product arising from the digestion of proteins, is converted into a less toxic urea by liver. During exercise, the liver quickly breaks down the stored glycogen into glucose, which is released into the bloodstream to be used by muscles as a source of energy. Another function of the liver is to make cholesterol and other fats that are needed by the body. Maintaining a healthy digestive system is essential for the health of the liver and other organs so that they can continue to perform their daily tasks that are vital to the overall health and well-being of a person.
Gallbladder. Your gallbladder is a small pear-shaped organ that stores and releases bile. Bile is the fluid your liver produces that helps digest fats in the food you eat. Your gallbladder is located in the upper right part of your abdomen. It sits just under your liver. Its main functions is to store bile. Bile helps your digestive system break down fats, and it is a mixture of mainly cholesterol, bilirubin, and bile salts. Your gallbladder is connected to other parts of your digestive system through a series of bile ducts called biliary tract. The biliary tract, sometimes called biliary system or biliary tree, is a pipe-like system that carries bile from your liver to your small intestine. Before you start eating, your gallbladder is full of bile. When you start eating, your gallbladder receives signals to contract and squeeze the stored bile through the biliary tract. The bile eventually finds its way to your largest bile duct, the common bile duct. Bile passes through the common bile duct into the duodenum or to your intestine, the first part of your small intestine, your duodenum, where it mixes with food waiting to be digested. After you eat, your gallbladder is empty and resembles a deflated balloon, waiting to be filled up again. Alright, so these are gallstones. This condition can happen to your gallbladder. Gallstones are hard, pebble-like pieces of material, usually made of cholesterol or bilirubin, that develop in your gallbladder. When gallstones block your bile ducts, they can cause sudden pain, which means you need medical attention right away. If left untreated, they can cause complications. So they can lodge in here, which is actually the passageway of your bile, so your digestion will be affected. Pancreas. Your pancreas is important for digesting food and managing your use of sugar for energy after digestion. If you have any symptoms of pancreatic digestion problems like loss of appetite, abdominal pain, fatty stools, or weight loss, call your healthcare provider. The pancreas performs two main functions. We have exocrine functions and endocrine functions. Exocrine function, it is when substances or your enzymes are produced that help with your digestion. Endocrine function, it is when hormones are sent out so that they can control the amount of sugar in your bloodstream. An exocrine gland runs the length of your pancreas. It produces enzymes that help to break down food. Your pancreas releases the following enzymes: lipase, amylase, and protease, which break down your proteins. When food enters your stomach, your pancreas releases the pancreatic enzymes into small ducts that flow into the main pancreatic duct. Your main pancreatic duct connects with your bile duct. This duct transports bile from your liver to your gallbladder. From the gallbladder, the bile travels to the part of your small intestine called the duodenum. Both the bile and the pancreatic enzymes enter your duodenum to break down food. How does the pancreas affect blood sugar? The endocrine glands in your pancreas release hormones that control blood sugar. These hormones are insulin and glucagon. Insulin reduces high blood sugar levels, and glucagon increases low blood sugar levels. So, these are hormones coming from your pancreas. Your body needs balanced blood sugar to help with your kidneys, liver, and brain. Your heart and circulatory system and nervous system also need balanced levels of insulin and glucagon to function. Can a person live without a pancreas? Yes, you can live without your pancreas. However, you will need to take enzyme pills to digest food and insulin shots to control your blood sugar for the rest of your life. Though pancreatic removal is rare, surgeons may remove your entire pancreas if you have pancreatic cancer, major injury to your pancreas, or severe pancreatitis.
The human pancreas is a pear-shaped gland, which is located in the back of the upper abdomen, somewhat behind and below the stomach. The head of the gland is the widest part and lies in the curve of the duodenum. The gland tapers and extends upward, ending near the spleen. The pancreas is composed of two types of tissues: the exocrine portion, which secretes digestive enzymes, and the endocrine portion, which secretes hormones. Because of its functionality in both the endocrine and digestive systems, it's referred to as a mixed gland. The exocrine portion of the pancreas secretes a pancreatic juice that contains digestive enzymes and bicarbonate. This fluid flows into the small intestine, where it further breaks down carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. Groups of distinct cells called the islets of Langerhans named after the 19th century German pathologist Paul Langerhans, are scattered more heavily in the tail of the pancreas. The islets of Langerhans are composed of 3 types of cells, alpha and beta being the 2 primary ones, and delta being the third. In response to dropping levels of blood glucose, the alpha cells secrete the hormone glucagon, which raises blood glucose levels. The beta cells secrete the hormone insulin in response to a rising level of circulating glucose. Insulin regulates sugar metabolism and helps to maintain normal sugar levels in the blood. A low secretion of insulin can lead to an accumulation of glucose in the blood, a situation known as hyperglycemia, and to the metabolic disorder diabetes mellitus. The delta cells secrete somatostatin, which regulates the release of insulin and glucagon. The pancreas consists of several lobules, each of which contains groups of clustered secretory cells known as acinar cells, commonly referred to as acini. The central ducts from the acini unite to form larger ducts, which open into the pancreatic duct. This connects to the common bile duct and enters the duodenum.
The large intestine. The unabsorbed and undigested food is passed into the large intestine. It extends from the ileum to the anus. It is about 1.5 meters in length, and it has 3 parts, the cecum, colon, and rectum. The purpose of the large intestine is to absorb water and salts from the material that has not been digested as food and get rid of any waste products left over. By the time food mixed with digestive juices reaches your large intestine, most digestion and absorption has already taken place. The large intestine is one long tube, but slightly different things happen in different parts of it. Its 3 parts are the colon, the rectum, and the anus. The colon can also be divided into parts. The entry point is about 6 inches long, and it is called your cecum. There. So we have the ascending colon, so your cecum, then descending colon, the sigmoid colon, and then your rectum. Here is the transverse colon. Mass movements constitute a type of motility not seen elsewhere in the digestive tube. Known also as giant migrating contractions, this pattern of motility is like a very intense and prolonged peristaltic contraction which strips an area of large intestine clear of contents. Defecation. Defecation is the final act of digestion, by which organisms eliminate a solid, semi-solid, or liquid waste material known as feces from the digestive tract via the anus. The act is known by a variety of terms ranging from the common like pooping to technical, example, bowel movement.
The large intestine is thicker than the small intestine. It is about 1 meter long and surrounds the small intestine. The small intestine is connected to the large intestine via the Bowens valve. It opens when chyme is to pass from the small intestine to the large intestine. The large intestine does not have any villi like the small intestine because most digestible substances have already been absorbed in the small intestine. However, the large intestine has an estimated 100 billion bacteria inside. They are important for many other tasks, such as the production of vitamins and the decomposition of fiber for the body's energy production. Many of these bacteria are an important part of the immune system by killing harmful germs. Through peristalsis, the chyme is transported from the ascending colon to the transverse colon to the descending colon. On its way through the large intestine, water is removed from the chyme, Furthermore, mucus is added for proper excretion of waste. Substances that cannot be absorbed through the small intestine or the large intestine remain in the rectum and are finally excreted through the anus.